Hello, everybody, and welcome into my latest live broadcast. Today, it is Friday. It's Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving. It's the 24th of November. 24th? Yeah, it's the 24th of November, 2023. My name is CareyHolzman. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope all of us here watching in the United States had a happy, healthy, delicious Thanksgiving. And I hope you're recovering nicely from the overeating and the time with family. And for everyone else around the world, welcome in. Our thoughts go out to our friends in Dublin who have been dealing with some rioting and such over some, I don't know the whole story, but you can't be right in the head to be stabbing at children. So not sure what that's all about, but it looked, from the footage I saw, Paul O'Brien sent some footage there, and it looked like Los Angeles during the riots. So, wow, holy cow. It's never good when the stuff we see here in the United States starts being copied over in Europe. However, hopefully that's not a new trend. And of course, I hope everybody there is staying safe. So today, I suppose I should say hello to everybody. Hello to all my friends in blue joining us in the chat room, and our friends also in green and in white in the chat, as well as a thank you to those who have contributed prior to the show starting with their super chats, which includes our friend Paul O'Brien with a €2 contribution. Says, let's get this party started. Hello, Carey and Marlena. Thank you, Paul. Craig Casabona with a very generous $20 super chat. Thank you, Craig. And Ben Laird joining us from Scotland says, hello all from Scotland with a £2 contribution. Right on. Thank you, Ben. Our friend Peter Laycock, Buster, sent a very generous PayPal contribution earlier today. And certainly our thoughts are with him as his had some medical issues there with some siblings, but they've had other medical issues they've come back home from the hospital to deal with. So hopefully this will be another of the same. It seems like he comes from a line of very strong individuals. So of course our thoughts are with him at this time. And hopefully it's just more of the same where they give him some medication, they send him home. Let's hope. All right. And that's what it's been every time. So hello to, let's see, we got Les Stevenson, Andy Woodbridge, Charles Vandula, and Robert McCord Magumi, George Ferrugia, and David Grimm, Daniel Bird, and Mats Olav Rickardson. Mats Olav joins us from Sweden. And Scroll, Raj D, welcome in, Brad Revel, and Bull142, all jumping in the chat. There's Davis Parsons and Patrick Russo, Jeff H, and Douglas Burchell, Jason Willis and Ross Bittner, along with Patrick Manny, R2 Rasanen, Captain Blinsky, and Garfield Rupe, Leslie Calvins, and Paul Garrett. Pete Tracker 34, Mark Gaines joining us all the way from Northern Ireland. Zach Bischoff renews membership, now a member for 11 months. Right on. He says, hey there, Carey, almost a year-long member. Hope everyone is well. Well, thank you for continuing your membership here, Zach. We appreciate that very much as we try to maintain our independence away from corporate sponsorships that can control what we show you, how we show it to you, when we show it to you, what we are told to say, and what we are told not to say. The vast majority of the YouTube tech content videos you are watching are corporate paid commercials. I just don't think people realize, and it's okay if you enjoy that type of content. It's usually very well done. There's editors and there's scripts and everything is polished and there's a staff and it's a multi-million-dollar business. Just look to other big tech channels with over 1 million subscribers and look at the kind of money they have. I don't do that. I keep everything sort of at the, what do they call it? Keep everything pretty much the way you would do it at home, keep it all very real. And if we just happen to fall into becoming as big and profitable as the other guys, we'll be doing it a very different way. basically, I'm trying to keep this channel as real as possible. I want to show you the equipment I use myself in my business. I've been in the business over 30 years. I've been self-employed for, about 2.5 decades now. And it's a tough thing to be self-employed if you've never done it. And the idea is that you've got to sell product that you can make a profit from, that you don't lose a lot of money on support and warranty. And you've got to be able to establish a good rapport with your customers. You've got to be trustworthy. You need those customers to come back again. Just having a customer once isn't going to cut it, unless you just want to go through a whole bunch of customers and burn everybody. And then how sustainable is that to stay in business? On the other hand, if you're trying to buy the cheapest product possible so you can earn the most amount of profit, then you're probably going to have a bunch of upset customers. You're going to do a lot of warranty returns or free labor, or you're not going to do any of it. You're going to lose those customers. We're right back to customers never coming back again. That's not sustainable. It's going to be short-lived. So any parts that I show you are parts I actually use. Whether or not someone any of you watching, have a preference for a different manufacturer, don't care. I mean, good for you. There's nothing, you don't have to agree with me. In fact, I'm not seeking your approval. I think some people think they know better than me, and perhaps they do. And I hope their business is doing better than mine. In the meantime, because nobody else but me is responsible for my business and my customers and paying my bills, all I'm doing is turning my camera on to give you an inside look at how I choose to run my business my way. You can run your business any way you want. And some people, some viewers, seem to think they're helping me by telling me everything I'm doing wrong. And yet I'm still here. So the way I know if I'm doing something right or wrong is based on how much money I earn at the end of the month. It's based on how many customers I've gained or lost. It's based on how many repairs I've had to do for free or warranty work. And all that has to be identified as early as possible in order to maintain a good relationship with the customer and keep me profitable. Those are the measurements that matter to me. And for people at home watching, it doesn't matter, but I'm not looking for your approval. At the very least, I would hope that you'd walk away from it saying, well, that's interesting. So you want to start a camera up and show everybody how you run your business, I think that would be great, and I would subscribe to you. Speaking of which, we do have a few members here in our chat room. I don't know if they're in there today, but they're regularly in the chat room who do run their own YouTube channels, such as our friend Planet Cryos, our friend Doug Betts over at Live Windows Training with Doug Betts, and our friend Jim KJ3N. You can be sure and check out all their videos as well. And we'd encourage you to start your own channel. And if you do, please share it with us so other members can enjoy your content. All right, so today I've got a board here that I'm very impressed with. I think it's a good bang for the buck. This is the ASRock B760 Pro RS D4. Now, if you're a regular viewer, you might be saying, haven't you already done this one? No, I've done the B760 Pro RS. Isn't that what you just said? No, I said this is a B760 Pro RS D4. Well, what's the D4? DDR4. That means this is essentially the same identical motherboard, but it takes DDR4 RAM instead of DDR5. And I think it might, there's one other difference that's not coming to me at the moment. It's one less M.2 slot or something. Anyway, this board sells for $129.95 or $129.99 over at Amazon and Newegg. I think Amazon sold out on it, but Newegg still has them in stock. Now, there is a micro ATX version of this board as well. There's a B760M. I want you to understand that a B760M is not the same as a B760 without the M. And the Pro RS D4 is not the same as the Pro RS. So when you're ordering your parts, it's important you pay attention to detail or you may not get what you thought you ordered. So order slowly and carefully and double check before submitting your order, or you're going to be going through a return and delaying the satisfaction of your new computer until you get the right parts. So it's much better to go slower so that you can complete your build faster. Now, the B760 Pro RSD4 is one of the few motherboards that supports 12th, 13th, and 14th gen processors. That's a full-size ATX board that's under $160. Motherboard prices have gone crazy, and power supply prices. I don't know why. But if we take a look over at Newegg, let me go over to their site. Now, I don't have any affiliate links for Newegg, but you know, again, I'm not a commercial YouTuber, so you know, if I can make a profit at links like I do on Amazon, that's great and everything. However, I'm not going to hold back a deal from you guys because I'm not making any money on it. That ain't right. So this is the board here, the ASRock B760 Pro. And in this case, it doesn't say RSD4. It does say it on the box, pictured, but up here in the title, it says DDR4. Now, the advantage of getting it with DDR4 is that DDR4 RAM is cheaper, and the motherboard is a little cheaper than the DDR5 version. If you want the DDR5 version, you'll pay more for the board and more for the RAM, and I don't know that you're going to notice one bit of difference in the performance whatsoever. The reason is we're not looking to build the fastest thing that's out there, because that's also the most expensive thing that's out there. Instead, let's see what we've got here. There's my Amazon links. Now, I do have links to all the parts below, and for all these parts at Amazon, I do make a commission on if you purchase them. Nothing is on sale for Black Friday that I regularly buy, and some things that were listed as with a red tag that said Black Friday deal were the same price they'd been all week. I don't understand that at all. This is a Core i5-13500. It comes with its own cooler. Intel sells more Core i5s than any other processor that it sells to the consumer. Maybe not necessarily the 13500. It might be, you know, 13600K or something. But regardless, combined, this is Intel's hot seller, the i5. And you can see why. You're going to get 6 performance cores, 8 efficiency cores, almost 5 gigahertz turbo speed for $247.49. Now, these did go on sale about 6 months ago for $209. I was hoping they'd go on sale again, but still at $247, $248. I think it's a great deal. It's a very, very, very fast processor. And it's also a lower wattage processor, which means you don't have to worry about the heat. You don't have to worry about a third-party cooler. You don't have to worry about the noise or the power consumption, the power bill. Now, we're going to pair that with the Samsung 990 Pro. This is the only 4 terabyte NVMe Samsung makes. So this is an example. This was on sale for $249 for about the last 2 weeks. Today or yesterday, all Amazon did was they added, and it was probably not Amazon, it's probably Samsung that does this. They added a red tag that said Black Friday deal with the same price of $249. I think $249 is a good deal for this drive. It's a 4 terabyte Samsung 990. Yes, you can get cheaper 4 terabyte drives, but not necessarily from a big name brand that has the performance and the support that comes with Samsung. You can see read speeds up to 7,450 megabytes per second. That's going to be Gen 4. Well, this motherboard will support a Gen 5. I'm not going to waste my money. We're reaching a point where the speeds are now becoming more of a contest of who can go faster rather than offering any meaningful performance improvement to the daily routines and tasks that people put to their computers. There are some people out there, don't misunderstand, please. There are some people out there that use their computers for such tasks where these slight performance gains are worth it. But it's not likely anybody watching any of these videos. Some people watch these videos strictly just to figure out what the fastest and best is and then go and buy that. You know, that's a game I'm not interested in playing. Have at it if you want to. I want to be able to sell my customers quality equipment at great prices where I don't have to be killed with free warranty work and support calls. So these are the parts I'm currently using for what I would consider to be the 8-year build. And there is a version of this that comes with a heatsink, by the way. You'll see here with a version with a heatsink, and that is available at $335. That's way too much money added for the heatsink. It's a $3 heatsink, if that. However, keep your eye open for specials and wait till after the hype of all the shopping dies down. That's oddly when the specials tend to happen, is when people aren't all working together as a mob looking for deals. But when it's just a regular Tuesday afternoon sometime, you'll see some amazing prices all year round at places like Newegg and Amazon. Now for the RAM has gone up a little. I take it back, it's gone down. So the 32 gig kits used to be $100 for DDR4. We're getting a full 64 gig kit because, quite frankly, it's only $108. I mean, that's an $8 or $9 difference from what I was paying for 32 gig last year. This is 3200 megahertz. It's 2 sticks, 32 gigs each. That leaves us 2 more sockets open and available. So if we wanted to, we could actually double that, put 128 gigs of RAM in. But it is only an i5, and I think it's kind of foolish to be putting that much RAM into an i5 processor. To each his own. You might put hubcaps on your lawnmower. Who am I to judge? It's your money. You want to burn it, burn it. Now, again, I come from a background of wanting to sell equipment to my customers that I'm going to be proud of, that they're going to want to order again from me, that they're going to want to hopefully refer me to their friends or anybody that says, hey, that's a really nice computer. Where did you get that? That's what I'm going for. I'm not going for setting any records. It's too time consuming. It's too difficult to find customers that are willing to spend that kind of money. And if I allow myself to be monopolized by such an individual and they keep me busy, I'm no longer self-employed. I'm basically working for them now. So in order to appeal to the masses, what I'm out to do is try and find that best bang for the buck at whatever period of time we are in the technology, in that it's going to last them a very long time. Recently, a customer returned some machines to me for upgrading. And if you watch that video from last week, those were Core i7 4770s that were running fine. One of them wasn't turning on, but then after I went to demonstrate it, it fired up just fine. So I have no idea what was going on with it. But they work great, and they will continue to work great as long as Windows 10 is supported until the end of 2025. So we still have just about 2 years left of Windows 10. If you want to upgrade to Windows 11, please don't waste your money on a Windows 11 license. Windows 10 licenses work to activate Windows 11. You do not need to install Windows 10 first. And they sell for less. In fact, our friends over at VIP CDK Deals, which I have up here somewhere. Here we go. I would be remiss if I didn't tell you about this, because this is where I get my licenses. This is how I save money. And these licenses are 100% legit, legal licenses. They are OEM licenses. These are the kind of licenses HP and Dell use. Don't expect to move them around to different computers. You're going to pay for the license once, you're going to activate it once, and at least in the case of Windows, it's going to stay tied to that motherboard forever for the life of the motherboard. Anytime you need to reinstall Windows, you simply don't put a product key in during the install. And when you go to Windows Update, it'll reassign the product key right back to you. You don't have to do anything. It auto activates and everything for the life of the motherboard. If you get a new motherboard, buy a new license. They're cheap. See here at $23.09, see this Black Friday deal for 22% off? Don't do that. If you look in the video notes below this video, if you enter the coupon code CAREY, you're going to get 30% off any product here. I'm not promoting any of the other products other than Windows 10, Windows 11, Office 2016, Office 2019, and Office 2021. Office 2016 is the last one you can activate with just a product code. 2019 and 2021 require a Microsoft account to activate. These all activate online automatically. You never need to talk to Microsoft. They're all 100% guaranteed to work, but you must use them within 30 days if you expect any customer support, no different than buying something at the store. So they do sell like a 2-pack of Windows 10 licenses where you can get a little, save a buck or two, but it's one license that can be activated twice. Windows 11 Pro costs a bit more, and I don't understand why anybody would pay more for it. Why would you pay more for this when you could just buy the Windows 10 Pro license? Now, it does have to be Pro to Pro. You can't use a Windows 10 Home license to activate a Windows 11 Pro computer. But a Windows 11 Home, it'll activate just fine one time. So don't be like the sheep. Save your money. Knowledge is power, my friends. One of the other great things is not only is Office 2016 Pro, you can activate it with a code without a Microsoft account, it's also one of the cheapest. So this comes out to about $27 after the product code, the 30% off using code word Carey. Again, please look at the video description below this video for all the links and all the coupon codes. And these codes are all guaranteed to work. They have great customer service, 24/7 customer service. If you run into any issues, just reach out to them. They will resolve it. If you're still having an issue, reach out to me personally. I personally back up anything I'm promoting here. And I have a super thank you and gratitude to the folks at VIP CDK Deals for backing us here on the channel. So again, we don't get controlled by any corporations. I say what I want to freely of VIP CDK Deals. And what I can tell you is unscripted, and I mean every word that I say. I use these products myself. I've probably bought over 100 keys, and I pay the same way you do. I come in here, I click buy now, I have to sign in. After you sign in, then you go back and choose what you want to buy. Go to checkout. At checkout, before you check out, it says apply coupon code, put in Carey, C-A-R-E-Y, then add that coupon and it applies the 30% discount. I use PayPal because this is a purchase in Hong Kong. My credit cards might freak out if I'm making a purchase outside of the United States. And then I have to call them and say, yes, that's really me. And it delays the purchase. So I just go through PayPal because PayPal deals with international transactions. That's commonplace for them. And so the transaction goes right through. I usually get my product key within 2 to 3 minutes. And then I use the product key on whatever product. I don't buy it 2 weeks ahead of time. I want to make sure that if that product key doesn't work for any reason, if I have any trouble, I want to immediately contact them while it's fresh. You know what I mean? And say, hey, this isn't working. And anytime I've done that, they typically just issue me a new key and I try that one and that one works. I think that's happened to me 3 or 4 times out of literally hundreds of times I bought the keys. So it's funny because I see the retail keys being promoted on Black Friday at places like Newegg, and they're ridiculously expensive. And it's the same thing, except the retail key could be moved from one computer to the other. But for what it costs, you could buy a new key every single time you wanted to move it. And you could buy 8 keys before you'd reach the price of one retail price of like Windows 11 Home. It's ridiculous how much profit there is in that for Microsoft. So you do you. If you want to spend that kind of money, don't let me get in your way. I won't spend it because then my customers wonder why my computers are so much more expensive. And I also won't source it from eBay or Facebook or, I need a legitimate seller that's going to stand behind what they sell. And VIP CDK Deals has been in business for like 15 or 17 years. They've been doing this a long time. Anybody who thinks it's illegal or wrong, Microsoft has offices in Hong Kong. Microsoft has offices in countries around the world with legal staff and whatnot. There's no way a company's selling these keys where Microsoft, a company this big, Microsoft is well aware of it. Clearly, they don't have a problem with it. The keys activate automatically. So if you still want to argue that, then buy your key somewhere else, because at that point, you're no longer even paying attention to reality. It's frustrating sometimes being on the internet, as you can imagine. There's a lot of people who know a lot, and they want to make sure you know that. And it seems to me, in my experience, the The more confident they are in what they're saying, the less likely they have any clue. So bear that in mind when you're getting information online. Always verify information. Do your own research if it's important to you. And certainly before you go plagiarizing it out to other people, at the very least, make sure that you have some verification from a reputable source that the information you have is accurate. Please don't get your news from the internet. Hopefully, if you're going to get it from a reputable news source for whatever that's worth. Everything's biased, but I'd rather have the bias of a news agency than some cult activist online. But that's just me. All right, so let me take a quick look here in the chat room just to see before we get started what's going on. William Gale said VIP CDK deals are excellent. I've never had a bad key yet. Yeah, well, again, how would they stay in business? What I'm saying is it's possible that there could be an issue. And it's true of anything you buy anywhere at any time, whether it's food at a restaurant or it's something online, a motherboard. Sometimes things happen. The important thing is that will the company stand behind the product? And VIP CDK deals does. So in the unusual and unlikely event that you would have a bad experience, you can have peace of mind. They're going to take care of you. They will take care of you. Alan Lindos with $7.77 says, here is my late fee again. Well, thank you, Alan, and happy Thanksgiving to, again, everybody here in the U.S. Let's take a look here. Nick Caffrey says, Carey, VIP CDK do much more than what's in your video notes, just so that people know to go to the site and find the other stuff. This is true, but I'm not personally backing any of the other stuff. That's between you and them, but that is true. They have other software as well. Ross Bittner mentions that if you buy Windows 10 Pro, you can install it without connecting to the internet. Windows 11 requires an internet connection to complete the installation. Good tip. Did not know that personally because, I always connect them to the internet to get the activation. Techno wants to know about buying the Feijing 4TB NVMe drive. I remember you used one in one of your builds. Do you still recommend them? I've got a stack of empty Feijing boxes about this tall in the other room. I've got no complaints. Some people will make a big deal about whether or not a storage drive has DRAM or not. And to me, this is silliness. The difference that DRAM makes in I/O is relatively minor. If you have a fast drive and fast I/O like a Gen 4 drive, the DRAM seems a bit unnecessary to me. However, if it's important to you, then you'll definitely want to, look at the specifications of NVMe drives before you buy them to purchase ones with DRAM. Personally, I think you're wasting your money, but it's your money. Again, I'm always trying to find what's reasonable and practical for the general population. I'm not interested in appeasing extremists. I'm not interested in appeasing people that are just benchmark chasing. They're a waste of my time. They're difficult people to please. They are the most who will complain, and they are the most who will complain about something that doesn't really have any impact on how they use the computer outside of benchmarking. So I don't have time in my world for those people. There are YouTube channels that cater to them. Some of those YouTube channels may even be responsible for creating these monsters. However, when you want practical, down-to-earth information, I'm your guy. And good luck finding that online, because it seems that a lot of enthusiasts are quite extreme. So I try to bring common sense and practicality back to the population. It's funny to me that that's something that needs to be done, that our culture has changed in the world where Everybody's excited about the latest thing every 10 minutes. It never ends. But there was a time that I remember in, you know, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, when this stuff was truly exciting. There's a great documentary called First Person Shooter, the ultimate documentary or something. This documentary is 4 hours and 30 minutes long or thereabouts. And it goes through all of the technology enhancements and how amazing it was to see the graphics and the 3D perspective of Castle Wolfenstein and how that improved in Doom and the ability to look up and down, which you couldn't do before, or the ability to add shelves, or the ability to add landscapes, or the ability to move around 360, like in Descent. The first time you heard a voice in a video game where it was talking like Duke Nukem 3D, it was so amazing. And these technologies didn't come out every 30 minutes. As the games improved, as the graphics got better, the gameplay got better, the storytelling got better, it was something to get excited about. It was like, wow, I've never seen anything like that before. We had nothing to compare it to. You know, watching the old Dark Forces game from Lucasfilm with the MIDI sounds to what you can play today, or, you know, the music in Halo. What an amazing game Halo was. And it was just like mind-blowing. And the same can be said before that with arcade games, where we had vector graphics with games like Berserk, or we started getting into 16-bit sound, like with Marble Madness. There was nothing else like it. You couldn't compare it to anything. You've never seen anything like it before. It's truly mind-blowing. But now for the last 20 years, we really haven't had much in the sense of mind-blowing. What we're getting now is more of the same, only it's faster and perhaps smaller. So the CPUs today are smaller and faster. The storage today is physically smaller, more capacious, it's more capacity. But, you know, in the size of a stick of gum, that's pretty cool. Wi-Fi is out 20 years ago, but it's still Wi-Fi. It's just a little faster. It's a lot faster, a lot more capable. Look at how far smartphones have come. Everybody had their candy bar phones for a while. You know, there are Nokias. And then now everybody's got a smartphone, which is basically a computer you keep in your pocket that can make phone calls. It's a pocket computer with a phone app is what it is. So now smartphones have also reached that point where, again, it's more of the same. The last few Galaxies and iPhones all look alike. They have perhaps better battery life, better screen quality, better picture quality, faster processors. But it's not like, oh, I've never seen anything like this before. And it feels like those days of being blown away by something that's unprecedented, that you have really not much to compare it to, are behind us, unfortunately. So it's hard for me to get worked up and excited to spend $700-800 on the latest Core i9 processor that's difficult to cool, that obviously runs very hot. The fans are going to be loud. And then when it's all said and done and you're actually using it, doesn't really do anything much faster, noticeably by most human beings in most tasks, than what we're about to build today. So with that, this is today's build, and this is all the justification behind it. I will be building a lot of these this year. I suspect that much like the Gigabyte H370, I think I built about 20 of those that year. I will likely be building at least a dozen of the B760s from ASRock. Why did I switch from Gigabyte to ASRock? Price. And I've been very happy with the ASRock build quality and features and overall look of the board. The Gigabyte boards, the ASRock boards, they've all gotten too expensive for me. Again, I'm trying to stay competitive in a marketplace where I'm competing with customers just going to Best Buy and buying a machine. So I will say the customers that do that tend to have more problems with their machines. Could say I'm bragging, I'm just telling you that's how it is. When I build a machine, I very rarely hear from a customer until it's time for a new one. Very rarely. I've got a customer who had 2 machines built by me, And they went to another tech for help, and that tech sold them a new machine. But the other machine that I built, they're still using today. So I'm like, why did you guys replace my machine? You know, why didn't you just have it fixed? Oh, the tech told them they only had a year left on it with Windows 10 expiring. That's 2 years away. What are you talking about? Well, they don't know. They believed him. And the guy took it as an opportunity to sell them something they didn't need. And now they have a Dell, and then they have a machine built by me. And guess what I got a call from earlier today? Which machine do you think has a problem? So that was beyond my control, you know. Anyway, now they're back. They left and they came back. It's a great compliment. It suggests I'm doing the right thing. I'm on the right track. And I just feel bad that they bought a machine they didn't need to buy and they're having problems they didn't need to have. But when they went a different direction and they decided to trust in somebody else, what can I do? These machines that I'm building today do not have a buyer yet. So if you're interested in purchasing one of the machines, one of these B760 Pro RSs, reach out to me. The email address is in the About section on my YouTube channel. You have to be in the United States. I really don't like to ship between this time of year and the end of the year because shipping gets crazy. It gets expensive. I think UPS just hired 60,000, or they're hiring 60,000 temporary workers just to help with the holidays. And then after about the second week of the year, it's all back to normal again. So what ends up happening is packages take longer to get where they're going because they have way too many. The people working don't really care. A lot of them don't because it's not a career for them. It's just a temporary holiday job. And all they're trying to do is move the packages. It doesn't matter if they throw it, kick it. For a lot of them, not all of them, but it's pretty common. Who cares, right? Just move the package. It's not like they got a career on the line. And the prices also go up. So if you were to buy something from me between now and the first of the year, and I have to ship it, let's say, to the East Coast, it's going to probably take several days longer, cost more, and the likelihood for damage in shipping is much higher. Will I do it? I'll do it. But I strongly advise patience in waiting for that to pass. Now, that's not to say every package will arrive late or every package will arrive damaged, but the likelihood goes way up compared to just about any other time of the year. And it's never fun, you know, if you have to return a computer 2,000 miles from where you ordered it. You were excited to receive it. And filing an insurance claim with a shipper, you're not going to get your money anytime soon, if at all. The insurance, like any other insurance, they look for every way they can to not pay it. So, well, I do know some people have gotten paid from insurance from carriers. Most people get denied. And a lot of people just can't be bothered when you see how much work it is, all the paperwork and everything. So those are all the business reasons why, you know, I'm not making any money at that. Why would I want to have to deal with a system coming back just because the delivery system was overloaded and just was careless with the packages? That's not my fault. But from a customer's perspective, you know, they bought the machine from me and the machine's didn't arrive in the condition it's supposed to. So that's something I have to deal with for free. So as you can see, I wouldn't be a big fan of working for free. And if I do that, I'm kind of rolling the dice and hoping it's all going to be okay. I'd rather not. Shipping a computer is always rolling the dice for me, but the odds are usually in my favor. All right, so let's see what we got here. William Gale says we could do with a Carey here in the UK. I wouldn't mind being in the UK. MDD1963 says greetings from Okinawa. Right on. Well, thanks for joining us. One of the things I do like about the mini PCs is they're very difficult to damage in shipping. They're much smaller and they're less expensive than a full-size desktop. So shipping mini PCs is no big deal. That's no problem at all. Aside from the fact it might take longer to get where it's going, I don't worry about them breaking. And the overall cost of shipping a mini PC is about 1/3 the price of shipping a full-size desktop. All right, so what we get from ASRock in the way that they package this stuff is pretty unusual, at least from my perspective when I'm used to dealing with Gigabyte. You get an anti-static bag that has your documentation, your SATA cables, your M.2 screws in it. Why they didn't just use a regular Ziploc bag, I don't know. It's not even sealed closed. Now, you might say, well, why would it be? It's not like it's got to be kept fresh. Yeah, but that's not how they do the motherboard, so it's inconsistent. They do this one way, they do the motherboard an overkill way. We've got this piece of foam here, which is entirely unnecessary. And then when we take the board out, you know how I know it's unnecessary? Because if you buy a board from literally any other motherboard manufacturer, most of the boards won't have any of this. They'll just have the cardboard, and they arrive just fine. What's interesting, though, is that, so that this is normal, that there would be some piece of cardboard that hugs the motherboard, and then the rest of the box is empty, and we'll build on this box. But what I find interesting is that this packaging must cost ASRock more money. And yet ASRock's charging less money for the boards than the companies that don't go through this extra packaging effort, which again, I think is unnecessary. It adds to the landfill. I don't believe these boards require this level of protection. It's solid state electronics, and nobody else does it this way. Maybe on some motherboards, some real high-end boards that are maybe a little bit more delicate, but to see ASRock go through this added level of protection, I find it a little unnecessary and annoying, because if I'm building 12 of these, that means I've got to go through this process 12 times that I would not have to do with literally any other board manufacturer. What's the process? Well, not only do they put foam here, again, nobody else does that. You might get a sheet of foam, but you don't get this full wraparound with walls that's furthermore zip tied down, not with one zip tie, not with 2 zip ties, not with 3 zip ties, but with 4 and sometimes 5 completely unnecessary zip ties. Where do they think this board's going to go once it's in the box? Why would they feel it's necessary to zip tie it down to the foam pad? There's nowhere for this foam pad to shift or for the board to shift where they would no longer be in alignment and the foam would not be doing its job. This is all landfill. That's all this is. And this piece underneath it is landfill as well. It's, as far as I'm concerned, completely and totally unnecessary. And if you buy a board from Asus, Gigabyte, or MSI, especially like a B760, something along the same caliber, like I said, you may have just a foam pad, none of this landfill stuff. So again, if you're just building one, who cares? But if you've got to build 12 of them and you need them built this week, you're going to be cursing out all the extra work you're doing, which is adding up to wasted time and added labor. It's just not real beneficial to have it. It's not worth it to me. Like, as far as I'm concerned, if somebody needed a bunch of systems in a hurry, I'd have to consider all the added labor. And you might say, well, it's not that big of a deal. It might be an extra couple minutes per build. But again, depending on how many builds you're doing, a couple minutes can turn into a couple hours, which can turn into effectively the time it would take you to build an entire system that you're just spending unboxing. Now, these are things you likely don't have to worry about. I share them with you because I'm in a unique position of things I need to consider when I'm building. So if you're wondering why I make certain decisions, I will keep going back to put your mindset, if you're running a business, the value of your time, and if you care about the environment at all, the added cost, and the landfill, and, waste. That being said, it is good quality stuff. And if you're at home and you're just building one, who cares? It's not making any difference to you. Now, in these little bags, this also drives me crazy. Why couldn't they just put all these little screws in one bag? It's like an inventory control thing where it's waste above There's many different ways you can choose to run your company. This is not the only way to control inventory of these little screws, and these little screws don't even cost very much. This tells you a lot about a company when they are effectively spending more money and labor to get these screws packaged and inventoried than they are paying for the screw. So these screws should just be, they're so inexpensive that I don't even know why you would calculate them. Even at scale for ASRock building thousands of boards a day, these tiny little screws are fractions of a penny, but they start making them more expensive when they start controlling the inventory, like they're trying to control cost. But it's likely costing them more money to do it this way. It drives me crazy sometimes, the way some companies manage their companies. It's a very inexpensive item, and there's no reason you couldn't have a package with 4 and just include it with every motherboard, whether it takes 4 or 3 or 2. Give them extras, who cares? That shows good customer service. In this case, they give us exactly how many we need, and they're very small and easily lost and difficult to replace because not all motherboards use the same size M.2 screw. If you want to go on Amazon and buy them, they're even more expensive. You can get them, assuming you know which size you need, and likely you have to buy them in a kit. Nobody's going to sell you one screw, likely. Drop it in an envelope, stamp it, address it, go through all that effort to send you one screw for, 3/4 of a penny plus the price of the stamp, which is probably going to be close to $1 anyway, plus the price of the envelope. Anyway, I just can't make heads or tails of that logic. I don't know why they do that. So ASRock could be saving a lot more money without the added packaging and the zip ties, plus all the labor involved, cost of materials, and then going through this level of inventory to make it where you're counting every M.2 screw. But counting the M.2 screws costs more than the M.2 screws. That's why it doesn't make sense to me. But it's our company. That's how they want to run it. Just know what to expect if you're buying from them. And they're not the only ones who do that, but it just stands out as a bit excessive and costly. And I can't help but wonder how much better the environment would be if they kept this stuff away from the landfill, and how much potentially cheaper the board could be. Even if it's only $1, I'll take it. Again, if I'm building 12 systems, that's $12. If I'm building 20 systems, that's $20. That adds up. So I'm just putting the little standoff for the Gen 5 M.2 up here. I think that's a Gen 5 M.2. I could be wrong. The heatsink looks a little weak for a Gen 5. This is promoting PCIe Gen 4x4. This one may not be Gen 5. I'd have to look at the specs. Maybe that's one of the differences between the RSD4 and the RS. The B760 Pro RS definitely has a Gen 5, and you'll know because the heatsink is like massive. Given the size of this heatsink, I think this is just going to be Gen 4. And that's fine. In fact, we can go ahead and put our M.2 drive in right now. Because this M.2 drive does not have a heatsink on it, I don't want to put it on either of these two M.2 slots. If this did have a heatsink, I'd use this Hyper M2. It's labeled Hyper M2 right down here at the bottom. And this one up at the top with the heatsink, I guess I'm going to have to look at the documentation, see what that is, because I want to make sure that I'm not putting it in a slower slot. Given it's got a heatsink, though, that suggests that it's a faster slot than the bottom one. But the bottom one says Hyper M.2, and the other two don't say that. So now I don't know. Storage. The M.2 supports PCIe Gen 4x2. 4x2 is half speed. Which one is that? M2-2. So one of these is half speed. I think it's the middle one. One PCIe 4 Gen 4x4. That's M.2-1. Is it the bottom one or the top one? I don't see where it's written on the board, but there's usually a diagram that highlights where M2-1, -2, and -3 are. So M2-1 is the top one. That's up here. And yeah, that's not Gen 5. And it makes sense because the heatsink is too small to be Gen 5. And then M2.2 has got to be the middle one. That's half speed, Gen 4x2. And then the Hyper M2 is Gen 4x4 and supports 64 gigabit per second mode. Oh, that's interesting. Both the top one and the bottom one support 64 gigabits per second mode. But the top one has a heatsink and the bottom one doesn't. So I guess if your Gen 4 NVMe comes with a heatsink, use the bottom Hyper M2. If it doesn't come with a heatsink, then use the motherboard's heatsink because it's going to match the design of the board. It's going to look good. And you're going to achieve the same speeds and then be able to control the heat both ways. Anything really Gen 4 and above, you're going to want a heatsink for. The motherboard heatsink pretty much is universally far superior than any heatsink that comes with a drive. So if your motherboard does have a heatsink and you're not sure which one should I use, always choose your motherboard's heatsink. It's almost always far superior to whatever a manufacturer includes. So don't pay extra for the heatsink when you've already got a heatsink on the board. Beyond that, the original heatsink board looks better to match the rest of the board. The random heatsink you're getting from the manufacturer on the M.2 drive likely isn't going to match anything. But when you're going down here at the bottom where there is no heatsink, then any random heatsink on these that the manufacturer includes will look good there. Ask me how I know. Because when we did the builds over the weekend, I put some Samsung 980s that had heatsink down on the bottom. Looks fantastic. But Gen 4 and above, you do want a heatsink on that NVMe drive. Especially if they're high performance drives. You will see some mini PCs coming with some Gen 4 drives that are pretty low end performers, and that's why they don't have heat sinks on them. Oh. Oh. I've been putting this little standoff here, thinking that that falls in line with the M.2 drive. It actually doesn't. This is for a shorter, maybe a 2260. Huh. Well, I'll be. You know what? I can leave it there. There's no circuitry underneath here. If we were to, this is a 4 terabyte drive. I guess there are some chips under there. I guess I'll take it out. I guess I will. I hate to take it out because it could get easily lost. But I think that's the only place that will go. I mean, I see a spot here for one, but I don't know what that's for. I also see a spot here for one, and I don't know what that one's for either. Okay, lesson learned. We're going to take that back out. I did not need to put that in, and pretty much the 2280 is the size of M.2 drive you're going to see most often. That's 22 millimeters wide, 80 millimeters long, and those are the most common ones you're going to see. So I guess, I've been putting these on in anticipation that if the owner wants to add the drive later, it's already there. It also shouldn't hurt anything for the drive to sit over it. Or it's intended to go somewhere else. I don't know. Again, news to me. So that's all right though. We're going to go ahead and place this one in the socket. So even when there's a heatsink that sits above it, they still usually secure down. But in this case, the heatsink secures it down. In most motherboards I've worked on, some people mistakenly believe that's the way it works, but it doesn't. That this drive usually has to be secured down on its own, and then the heatsink secures down on its own. But some people, they just take the lazy way out, and they're just like, well, the heatsink's going to hold it in anyway. And here, they're actually doing it on purpose. So there you go. Remember when I said that all motherboard manufacturers don't make or use the same size M.2 screw? Well, ASRock's doing a lot of things differently than other manufacturers I've been using. So it's kind of throwing off what I consider to be normal. I guess that's the best way to phrase it. Yeah, I mean, it's down. It's not moving. A lot of times when you just put the heatsink down on top of an M.2 drive that is supposed to be secured, that M.2 drive will move up and down a few millimeters. That could be a problem, especially if you're shipping a computer like I often do, and I ship them 2,000 plus miles away. That can be a concern. Could theoretically dislodge and pop out. Now, it seems unlikely, and in this case, it's designed to go in that way. There is no movement, and it is solidly secured, so I'll keep documentation out, which, as you can tell, was in this package like this. Let's put this back in. Got a piece that'll go back on too. So you can get yourself a really sweet computer with 64 gigs of RAM, 4 terabytes of very fast Gen 4 storage, with a very fast, nearly 5 gigahertz processor for what is around $800. Now, granted, we don't have a power supply or a case selected yet. That'll be in part 2. But those parts, you know, depending on what case you go with, depending on what power supply you go with, could be as little as an extra $100 or as much as an extra $1,000. So it's really up to you and how you want to deck this out. But if you just went with a 500 watt, 80 plus name brand power supply, probably do that for $50-$60. And you could probably get a decent case for around 80. So I still think you'd be around the $800 price range when it's all said and done. Granted, that storage drive was on sale for $250 and the CPU is $250. Those two items are $500. The board being $129, the RAM was $110. And then you've got the case and power supply. And then you can get your operating system really cheap over at VIP CDK deals. You're done. Because the cooler comes with the power supply. You don't have to buy a cooler. And it's quiet, and it totally keeps that CPU cool, even under Prime 95 for 20 minutes. Not a problem. And it'll likely be the fastest computer you've ever seen. Don't let the fact that it's an i5 cause you to think that it's less than. In many ways, I think it's far superior to the i7s and i9s that cost more money to run because they use more power, and they cost more money to cool because you often have to buy third-party cooling solutions. And even with third-party cooling solutions on the i9, you still may not be able to cool them under heavy, intense workloads if that's how you intend to run them. Unless the only heavy, intense workload you put on your computer is a benchmark, then to me, that's like you're cutting yourself. Like, why would you do that to yourself? Why would you spend money for parts you don't need to get temperatures you are somehow psychologically fixated on? It's your money and it's your time. Take it all back apart, put it all back together so you can go, 3 degrees cooler. I think that's utter madness. It's certainly no way I could stay in business doing that, taking it apart, putting it back together, charging the customer extra. And at the end, it's making, you know, a few degrees difference. Like that's not something a business cares about. So I don't waste my time with it. I don't recommend you do either. If it doesn't make good financial sense for a business, it likely doesn't make good financial sense for the end user. Just that businesses are usually better with their money than most end users. So again, it's your money and it's your decision. So this does have an M.2 Wi-Fi slot here. And what I'm doing at this point is I'm just taking all these little M2 screws and putting them in all the empty little holes here so that when the end user wants to add any of these little, take advantage of any of the M.2 slots or M.2 Wi-Fi slot, they don't have to wonder where the screws are. The screws will be on the board where the customer will be looking for them. And we won't have to deal with trying to figure out where we can buy these that match this particular board from this particular manufacturer, and then wait for them to come in because they most assuredly won't be able to be purchased locally. We'll have to order them off of a site like Amazon and then wait for the mail, and then that upgrade could finally be done. What a hassle, right? So by just screwing these down now, that is a support call I guarantee I'm not going to get. Or if the call is where's the screw, it's on the board. It's a very fast support call. I don't mind it if the support call's quick. Remember, I'm my own employee, so if there's a support call, it's interrupting whatever I'm doing. And if that interruption lasts for an hour, then whatever I was doing likely isn't going to get done that day. And whatever I had scheduled the next day likely isn't going to get started that day. And that's how I end up, if you guys wonder, sometimes things seem like they take a long time. I'm juggling, what did my friend say? I'm spinning a lot of plates. Okay, so we got one screw there, one screw there, one screw here. We have an extra screw and an extra standoff. That's what it is. Those two go together. And we'll just put that. Let's do this. We keep all the documentation and spare parts in the empty motherboard box, which won't be empty by the time we're done. It's in there. Documentation can go in there. This documentation can go in there. SATA cables can go in there. And then the customer can get all that. This is all just recycle bin. Recycle bin. So for $248, I think it's even though I've gotten this for a cheaper price, I think the regular price is the best CPU you can buy for the money. Price per gigahertz, I think it just can't be, there's no better alternative in my mind, even from AMD. So this is what I choose. This is what I choose for my customers. And this is why, if you like AMD better, then, buy AMD. It makes no difference to me. This is what I use. There you have a little Go Faster sticker on here. There's a little documentation that comes with the CPU. We'll just throw that in the motherboard box. Customer can have that. Now here we've got the Intel CPU, which we can slide out right through the top. It's in a package like this. And then in this rest of the container, we have the heatsink, which already contains pre-applied thermal compound. So you don't have to add any, you don't have to spend any money. You don't have to worry about who's right about how to install it. None of that applies here. This is very simple. Again, as a system builder, I want to build these quickly, but reliably and consistently. And not dealing with the thermal compound is a major benefit. It's less messy. Every system gets the same amount. And again, the odds of a support call coming in with any relation to heat problems is practically zero. So we'll take the CPU out, align it properly into the socket as we've shown countless times on this channel. We'll drop that into the socket. We don't push down on it because there's 1,700 little delicate pins underneath. And those pins are going to be made contact with this lid when we close it and secure it down. Save this piece in case you have any warranty issues You need to take everything off the board if you're sending it back, including those M.2 screws. And then you have to cover those pins, because otherwise if someone picks up the board and their thumb goes in there, you've just voided your warranty by not covering that. Every manufacturer will void your warranty. So we're going to go ahead and close that retention plate down. And when we close this lever, going to take a little bit of strength. There's a lot of resistance, and get it hooked underneath so it makes contact with those pins underneath. And then we can take our cooler, which comes, remember, with the $250 CPU, you're not just getting a CPU, you're getting a good looking, high quality, quiet cooler that is more than adequate to keep the CPU cool under any workload for any length of time. Thermal compound is already there. I always arrange it so the cable, the cord, is coming out towards where it's going to plug in. You don't want the cord wrapped around it. It can get caught up and get caught in the fan. And it looks ugly besides. And we just push these little plastic towers down. And I push them down doing opposite corners so that we have the bottom of the heatsink doesn't get warped. If you go around in a clockwise or counterclockwise, it might sit tilted and you can't tell from looking at it on the outside. We can't see under it. So always do opposite corners, whether they're screws or push pins, so that you make sure that your surfaces are level. I always cut this little tag off because I think it's ugly and it kind of interferes with my otherwise attractive cable management. Thank you very little. And I've got some scissors in here. Found them. I'll just cut this tag. And I just peel the last part of it off. There we go. That will go in the trash can. Now, this is a good time to do a little cable management for this CPU power cable, which is going to go on this header right here. It only goes on one way. Basically, when I plug it in, I can get an idea of just how much extra cable I've got. And this motherboard is out like this. It's easy to get to this cable. And that's why it's a great time to go ahead and grab a couple wire ties and clean that up. Because once we put this into a case, that'll be darn near impossible without taking it back out again. So I'll go ahead and put these things back together here just to free up some space on my bench. So while we do need to save this, we do not need to save that unless you want to. But the customer absolutely has to have this. Now, a lot of times when I give the box to the customer, I always tell them, you know, put this away. There's nothing you need in there today, but in the future you might need something and you're going to want to know where it is. 50-50. Customers know where that box is in 2 years or longer. 50-50. Very common. They have no idea what I'm talking about. You don't remember the box I gave you when I sold you the computer? No, you didn't give me a box. Yeah, I gave you a box. I told you to put it away somewhere in case we needed it in a couple of years. It's got all the spare parts in it. It doesn't matter. It just means I can't complete the job because I don't have the parts I need. So I'll have to order them and we'll have to reschedule another visit to get the job done. Or if it's a machine that's dropped off, it's going to be about a week before we get the parts that we need so we can do the job. It delays the job. It makes it cost more. Even if you're doing it yourself, you can't find the screw and the screw's in the box and you know where the box is, you're going to be ordering one. So whatever it was you were planning to do can't be done until you get the screw first. And it costs you a little extra money. You're going to have to wait a little extra time. So either way, not my problem when people don't put stuff away, but it's to your own benefit for cost-wise and time-wise. I live in a world where everybody wants everything immediately. As soon as they've made up their mind they want it now. They might have lived without it their whole life, but as soon as they decide, okay, I want that, it's now, how fast can I get it? It's kind of crazy. As long as it wasn't on their mind, they weren't missing it. Then they decide they want it. Well, by gosh, they better have it immediately upon demand. And so you can imagine how frustrated and disappointed the customers are when I can't complete the requested task, or if they can't even do it themselves because they don't have all the parts, they don't know where the parts are. And I have to tell them, I gave you those parts and I told you to put those parts away because when this day came, you were going to want them. And of course, they don't remember that conversation. So there's nothing more I can do. At that point, the conversation's over. At that point, they might bring it to me. I might have the parts here and can get it done. In many cases, they're in such a hurry. Now that they've decided they want this upgrade done, they'll bring it to me since they won't have to wait. So it costs them more money. Okay. Okay, we can put the RAM in. Luke Greenia says, Carey, I know right where the box is that I have for the Musatex build. It's in the filing cabinet next to my desk. It's not my problem, man. That is to your benefit, not to mine. All right. So we've got the Go Faster sticker and teeny tiny documentation. So this is DDR4 RAM. This is 3200 speed. And we're going to go into the second socket away from the CPU, which is there. And then we skip a socket and go to the very first socket here, the one closest to the edge of the board. That's what ASRock recommends if you're only using 2 DDR4s. It's the same with DDR5 too. It's the same sockets. It will work if you put them in any socket, but it won't work as efficiently or reliably. So you may not know any better. You might just think you know better and plug them in any socket. The system's still going to blow your mind with how fast it is. So you won't think you did anything wrong, but it will be technically faster and more reliable if you do it the way the manufacturer suggests. But ignorance is bliss, and that's an example of that kind of mentality. I see this all the time when systems come in for repair that people have built themselves. Oh, it's been running great for, you know, X amount of time. And you're like, yeah, well, it's been running modestly. It could be running faster. It can. What do? Just move this part over to here. That's all you have to do? Doesn't cost anything? No, you just install it right. Wow. All right, so I want to grab a power supply. We'll turn this on. We're probably going to have to update the BIOS, which I think I still have left over on here, but I'm not sure. We'll find out. I've slept since then, so I can't remember. And then we're going to plug this in here. I don't need to use the other 4-pin. If your power supply supports it, plug it in. But if it doesn't have it, most power supplies don't. That's really just there for overclocking, and we're not overclocking a chip like this. Wouldn't be doing it on a B760 board anyway. That's something else that doesn't make sense to me, but ASRock does some weird stuff. It's good quality motherboard at a great price, so I put up with it because it's not hurting anything. It just seems like a waste of time and money to add that. Again, the board, if the board didn't have that, I think we could still fully populate the board and not have any problems, as long as we're not overvolting it. And we wouldn't have to pay for that part. Price of the board would be cheaper, but only by a few pennies. But if they did all those cheaper things by a few pennies, it adds up to dollars. And then when you're buying a dozen or 2 dozen motherboards or 100 motherboards, it adds up significantly in cost savings. I was looking at the word power switch and I said power savings. Okay, so keyboard and a mouse and then power. Keyboard and mouse here. This is just an external on-off switch I bought from Amazon. I have a couple different designs and they sell them for people like me that build computers, repair computers, or computer enthusiasts that like to mess around with stuff like this in their house. Lots to choose from there. They're about $10 or so. Oh, well, I'm over here. Let's go ahead and plug video in. going to use HDMI right here. And I'm not going to plug the network in. Power cable. We make sure the switch on the power supply is in the off position just for safety. Once we're plugged in and it's good and secure, then we'll flip the switch to on. You'll probably see some RGB light up here on the side of the board. I don't know how well the camera can pick that up. See my hand, it's reflecting it. It's changing colors. You can turn that off in the BIOS. And yeah, I think if we go over to our HDMI input on OBS here, take camera 1 and put it in the middle. I mean, into the corner. Just put me over there. Hit the power button. Fan turns. I did not hook the light up for the power button, so yeah, that's why you're not seeing the little light up. I couldn't be bothered. Let's see. We should hopefully get a power on self-test here. There it is. There's no operating system installed yet, so it should just take us into the BIOS since there's nothing to boot to. Oh, interesting. We're at version 4.01, and I think the latest is 6.08. I think I have that on this flash drive. It's one way to find out. If not, I'll go and download it from ASRock's website. It's whisper quiet. You don't hear a thing. It's rocket ship fast. This thing is unbelievably quick. All right, let's do instant flash. There, that's what I want. Uh-oh. Can't find it. No file name selected. So that means if it was on here, it isn't anymore because it would auto find it. I do have one more over here, but I think this is for the Z790. Once again, back in the day, you had to be really careful over which BIOS you selected. These days, it won't let you flash the wrong BIOS. It just doesn't allow it. So I'm just going to check this one. That appears to be it. Update. Here we go. So as long as we leave the system alone and let it do what it needs to do, these BIOS updates are always successful, always. You just don't want to interrupt the computer. You don't want to be messing around with the keyboard or mouse. You don't want to interrupt power. So as long as you leave it alone, 99.8% of the time, it's going to be just fine. So if you're one of those people that can't leave stuff alone, get up and walk out of the room. Go find something to do for at least 3 minutes. Don't come in, don't look. If you're the kind of person that has impulse control problems, ADD, leave the room. And you know what? If you don't want to come back for 10 minutes, this is the most patient thing in the world. If you want, you can leave, go to the store, go shopping, come home, go to bed, wake up tomorrow, have a cup of coffee. It will still be waiting for you when it's done. It's okay to let it sit. It's not okay to be impatient and to push it along. You will create a problem that will likely result in you spending time on the phone or through emails, investigating how to fix it yourself, giving up, then sending in forms for the online forms for the manufacturer to approve an RMA, and packaging it back up, taking it back apart, taking it back over to the post office, getting it shipped with tracking, all because you couldn't be patient. You decided that you wanted to go through hours and hours of this nonsense. So I cannot emphasize strongly enough that if you're going to do this, do it right or don't do it. If you feel like you cannot leave it alone, please do not upgrade your BIOS. All right, let's see what I'm missing in the chat room. Carey, did you remove the plastic from the cooler? There was no plastic on the cooler. These Intel CPUs, when they come with a cooler, they're now being protected by the little cardboard flap. There's no, anytime, generally speaking, anytime there's pre-applied thermal compound, there can't be any plastic on it, or when you take the plastic off, it would take the thermal compound. Intel used to have a little form-fitting hard piece of plastic that covered the bottom of the cooler, but they don't even use that anymore. They've cut down production costs. It's just smarter manufacturing. It's just put naked into the box. And when you take it out of the box, it's open to the environment. So you want to be very cognizant of that thermal compound being exposed once you remove it from the box. But again, when you have thermal compound pre-applied, you'll never have any piece of plastic you've got to remove. Not in the sense of like a film. The system is going to shut itself off and restart a couple times. That's all normal. Leave it alone. DJ Matrix says, I hate Intel's new box design. Does anybody here buy the CPU for the box? This is going to go in the landfill. Who cares? I'm buying for what's in the box. I don't understand consumers sometimes. I'm only looking at the box for a few moments from the time it takes me to take the product I purchased in the box to then destroy, recycling or throwing away the box. It's bizarre, very bizarre thing to care about. Let's see. I don't see any computer questions here. If you did ask a computer-related questions, be sure and ask again so I can see it. Imagine Guy wants to know if you have more of those motherboards, can you label that flash disk with the BIOS update? If I were doing these, by the dozens every day, I suppose I could label it. However, the BIOS updates change. So the last thing I want to do is use a BIOS update that I've downloaded for more than a couple of weeks, because there's a good chance there's a newer BIOS. And if I'm not looking because I already have it, then I may be putting an old BIOS on. So I think that would be a bad habit to get into. However, that's a choice you would make. It's a choice I choose not to make because I very rarely work on the same board for more than a couple of months and then I move on. And in that couple of months, there could be multiple BIOS updates depending on when I do the build. From the first build I do to the last one, there may be at least one, if not more than one BIOS update. And if I already have it, for example, this BIOS update I already have, how do I know that's the latest one? I did not go and look. It's entirely possible ASRock has released another one and that I'm effectively putting an old BIOS on. So not a good habit to get in if I were you, but you do you. But that's why I don't do it that way, in case you were wondering. Peter VZ with a €1 contribution. Thank you, Peter. Paul O'Brien with €2 says, buy yourself a lollipop and pretend to be Kojak. Am I bald? Well, there's still hair up there for now anyway. Who loves you, baby? All right. I don't see any other questions being asked recently. So that's our BIOS update done, presumably the latest BIOS, as I've already explained. So I do have another one of these boards, so I guess I better keep that. I want to put that over here, because that's what I thought that one was. These are just really cheap flash drives, and they're great for BIOS updates. I can't recommend using the cheapest piece of crap flash drive for a BIOS update. Using the latest and greatest flash drives may be too large of a capacity or a different format than the motherboard can read, and you're like, I can't see the BIOS. Yeah, because you're not following the instructions. So cheap, older flash drives, you don't have to worry about following the instructions. They're so basic. There's no alternate to being advanced. So it makes the BIOS update process much easier universally, regardless of the age of the motherboard being new or ancient. They can all read these old flash drives, these old cheap ones, like 2 gigs and smaller. They all read them universally. Now, I'm going to put Windows 11 on here. Windows 11? Yeah, I think I'll put Windows 11 on here. So now that we've got the BIOS updated, I've got my Windows 11 flash drive. You can make one of your own legally by downloading Windows 11's Microsoft's Media, what's it called? Windows Media Creation Tool. It's completely free, available to the public. They want you to download it. They want you to create this. You have to provide your own 8 gig or larger flash drive for this. And the whole process is automated for Microsoft. It won't activate unless you pay for the activation key. That's the trick. So Microsoft has done this at least since Windows 95, maybe even Windows XP. They're like, take the operating system, please, take it. We'll even make the media for you. We'll walk you through the download and the creation. And then when you want to buy a key, that's how you activate it. And then you can save money by buying the keys, as I mentioned earlier, from our good friends at VIP CDK Deals. And be sure to take that 30% off with coupon code CAREY. And don't buy a Windows 11 Pro product key. I don't think I bought one before I realized, what am I doing? Windows 10 Pro product keys activate Windows 11 Pro. And they're cheaper. Ends with the same result. So, I don't know. You guys want to throw your money away, throw it away. I don't care. I'm just trying to help you out, man. All right, so I'm going to just take a look here. Processors, the 13500. 64 gigs of RAM is being seen. Perfect. So I'm going to hit, what am I going to hit? F10, is it? No. Escape. Discard changes. I think I need to get rid of camera 1 because I can't see what's behind the camera. Got to go full screen so I can see this the way you guys at home can see it. Oh, now I can see. Okay, so go to save. Save configuration changes and exit. Yes. And now it's going to automatically boot to that flash drive. I don't have to make any changes whatsoever to the BIOS. I don't have to set the date and time. Please don't. Leave it alone. Windows will take care of that on its own. It can be off by years. It's not a problem. If it's off by 100 years, that could be a problem. But the way it comes out of the box, brand new, it's going to be set to the date and time of the country it was manufactured in. So in my case, that's around 12 or 13 hours difference. Forward or backward, I don't know. I can't remember, but it doesn't matter. It's close enough. Microsoft's Windows will automatically set the date and time for us. Once we're installed and connected online and go to Windows Update, we can adjust the date and time automatically, which automatically adjusts it in the BIOS through Windows. It does them both at the same time. All right, so next, install new. People often fat finger the date, they get it wrong and they make it worse. That's why I'm suggesting just don't even bother. I click I don't have a product key because we're not going to do that till later. I always install Windows the same. We're going to do Windows 11 Pro. Hit next because I'm going to be buying a Windows 10 Pro product key. Agree to the license agreement. And we always choose custom install. It sees our 4 terabyte drive right there. And I just hit next. If I had multiple drives, I would not be hooking them up yet. Otherwise, I'd have to be very careful over which drive I was installing my operating system to. And if I had a very small drive for my operating system, it might utilize and make partitions on the other drives to spread the load. If it doesn't have other drives as an option, it forces the install on the main drive that you want it to be on. And those other drives won't do you any good. It's like people think they're saving time if I just put it all together at once. But you're actually probably creating your own little nightmare because of all the problems that can result in, including something not working correctly. And now you have a lot of stuff to diagnose versus diagnosing just what you put together. So only put together what you need as you need it. And then when all of that is verified and complete, then add one thing, verify and complete it, add the next thing, verify and complete it. If you want to work efficiently and not drive yourself insane, because most of the time you're going to find you did something really simple and really stupid, and it'll take you way too long to figure out what that was when you could have avoided it altogether if you just took the advice from sage old Uncle Carey, who's been doing this for over 30 years. There is a method to my madness. I don't want to work any harder than I have to. and I don't want it to take any longer than it needs to take, I have customers just clamoring, when is it ready? When is it ready? And look at how fast this machine is. We're already through our first boot up of our Windows 11 install. I mean, how many minutes was that? Was that even 2 minutes? And now it's going to reboot on its own, and it's going to start installing Windows 11. We can eject, we can remove that flash drive if we want to. Everything it needs to complete the install is now on the internal drive. I usually just leave it alone, don't touch it, just let it go. Eventually it's going to ask us for a connection online or to create a username, and that's when I will then start touching stuff again. So hopefully this will be ready here in just a moment. We've been, what, an hour and a half, 90 minutes on the video. You'll see the build only started half an hour ago. It doesn't take long to build a machine like this. We've only put in 3 parts and a cooler. It's pretty simple stuff. And they're good name brand parts. Don't go cheap unless you like problems and frustrations and things unreliable. You are going to pay for it with your time. And you can buy good quality stuff and not pay a lot of money for it. That Samsung drive, I think at $250 is a really good deal. You can buy cheaper 4 terabyte drives if that level of performance and that level of warranty isn't that important to you. It's not going to save you a lot. You can save upwards of $50 maybe. For some people, $50 might be the difference between whether or not they go to the club or something. So whatever, to each their own. But if you do it right the first time, you shouldn't have to do it again for another 8 years. So if you're buying cheap parts or you're buying them from like eBay or other questionable sellers, you just don't know what you're getting. You don't know why somebody's selling it. You don't know if you're buying stolen goods. I would simply buy from reputable resellers where there's a very liberal return policy, like with Amazon and Newegg both, but Amazon has free returns for 30 days. Reputable manufacturers that do answer support calls. And those are the kind of manufacturers where you generally don't have any support questions. The ones you're going to have the most support questions for are the ones that have terrible support. They're the ones you paid the least for. All right, we're going to go United States here and US here and skip any alternate keyboard layout. Like I don't have internet, and continue with limited setup. This way I can create my local account, which I'll just call user, leave the password blank, and I turn everything off but location settings. And I still have it unplugged from the network at this point. Once we get to the Windows desktop, then I can plug it into the network safely, go to Windows Update, do the time change, etc., and let Windows control all of it, and it automatically does it in the BIOS for us at the same time. Just working smarter, not working harder. That's what it's all about. It's all about getting it right the first time and making sure that there's profit in it for me, because if I have to go back and redo anything, or if my customer is inconvenienced with a problem, that could cost me future business from that customer, and it takes me away from whatever I was doing earning money to going to fix something where I'm not getting paid. So the customer's never happy about it. I'm never happy about it. And if it happens more than once, oh boy, there's going to be hell to pay in my world, because it's too costly. There's not enough profit in this business to afford to be able to do that. I think I can turn camera 1 back on. If I can find it. Hey, there I am. Then I can go back over to my chat room here and see what you guys are talking. Shane Perkins says, I think the memory is running at 2400 in the BIOS. I better hope so. We don't want to be tuning up anything and overclocking the memory until we know what we've got is solid and reliable. You don't want to be turning everything up to full speed until you know it's running at normal speed reliably first. If you ever bought a car, the last thing you want to do on a brand new car is slam down on the engine and just totally ruin your break-in. Now, these days, I guess that doesn't really matter much anymore, but back in the day, one of the concerns I had about buying a used car was not knowing how the engine was broken in. Most people don't know you needed to break them in. So you want to make sure that the engine's solid and things are broken in properly before you go tuning everything up and, redlining the engine. It's a great way to just ruin stuff. And that's true in general with everything. If you have a really, really super hot, if you have a really cold oven and you throw your food into it without preheating it first, you might find that the food doesn't come out correctly. Like it gets overdone on the outside and undone on the inside, or it takes longer to cook, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So in a way, we absolutely want to verify our foundation before we build a house on it. Otherwise, all of your effort in building the house may just come down collapsing on you. It's not critical going from 2400 to 3200. It would not speed up the installation of Windows. It won't encourage us to do anything any faster, nor will we notice any difference based on what we've done so far. We're not going to get the drivers installed any faster. So that is, again, a fixation on a number based on a benchmark that makes very little difference in reality. For my customers, I can turn 3200 speed on. In other words, I can turn on XMP or not turn it on. And one of two things happens. If I turn it on, the customers that use their computers, they're not running benchmarks. They're using their computers. They don't notice it at all, or I start getting calls that the computers are crashing. So if you want to turn on XMP, that's your choice. I will turn it on here as long as everything's fine. But if I turn it on and things start blue screening, it's coming right back off again, because aside from benchmark fixations, on an Intel platform, it makes almost no difference whether it's on or off. If you can turn it on and it's not crashing anything, causing any crashes, enjoy it. But we won't do that until long after our drivers are installed, our Windows is activated, our system will be in the case, and we will know that if the only change we made was turning on XMP, and now suddenly the system's not reliable, there's no doubt or question as to what the problem is. The memory controllers these days are built on the CPUs, and so therefore every CPU is different, and one may clock higher than another or accept a higher clock speed for RAM. And a lot of people will buy different sets of RAM thinking it's the RAM. It's ultimately the silicon on the chip that's causing that compatibility or incompatibility. But again, customers can't tell a difference when I turn it on unless it starts crashing. And then I get calls. You know what I have to do? I have to go and turn it off. It's frustrating to create support problems. And that's both Intel and AMD. It's the same. People might see a difference with AMD with regards to GPU performance, the built-in APU performance on the AMD side. But these are gamers, so I don't really care about a gamer's performance. That's all silly nonsense with people with nothing better to do. They're welcome to chase after those benchmarks, to go after those frame rates. I wish I had the kind of time where someone else was paying my bills and I had nothing else to do but to fart around with gaming. I was a teenager and I enjoyed it. And I enjoyed it probably up until I was about 30. The game I like playing now is to build the computer and sell it to the customer, to fix any problems the customer has and to get paid. To pay to go to work, to pay to do challenges and overcome challenges. Silliness to me. Like, I can't understand why anybody would pay money to go to work. It's weird. I'm used to getting paid for work. So again, for children, I think gaming's great. For adults who maybe spend an hour or two, whatever, I don't want to be too judgmental about it, but I know there's something around the house that needs to be done that's more important. As a homeowner, I can tell you there's always something that has to be done. And if I'm gaming, that time could be spent fixing or doing something, whether it's laundry or the leaking faucet or mopping the floor, sweeping the floor, taking out the trash, bringing the garbage cans out, bringing the garbage cans in. It's a never-ending list. So if you have the freedom where other people are taking care of that stuff for you, I guess I'm jealous. Let's see. I think I've got it plugged in now, so I can go back to, yeah, buy a console is all I'm saying. Go buy your Xbox or PlayStation and have at it. Makes more sense to me. All right, now I'm going to click yes on the auto driver updater. And then I'm going to go down here to the clock, right click. Oh, I guess I want to start this first because my internet is slow. We'll get this driver stuff started. Well, that's thinking. Let's come down here. Just date and time. Sure, it's going to do it as soon as I lose my patience. All right, and then we'll turn on set time zone automatically. Set the time automatically. This should go to 240. Turn it back. There it is. And that adjusted it in the BIOS as well as in Windows, just so you know. So we're going to go ahead and download these drivers automatically, which is a nice little thing ASRock does. There's no bloatware in there. That's just the drivers. So I appreciate that. Saves us a step. And then once that's done, we can go to Windows Update and we can start grabbing updates. As long as everything's running fine and not crashing, we can proceed with putting the motherboard into the case with the power supply. And then at that point, if everything's still good, if we want to turn on XMP and then run it through some more testing just to make sure everything's still okay, all well and good. If somebody wanted to turn this into a gaming machine, just buy a bigger power supply than what I'm intending to use. I'm only intending to use a 500 watt. Go ahead and get yourself something bigger than that. This is a 750 I'm using here. You'll easily double or triple the cost of your computer with the price of a GPU these days if you're buying anything decent. I just can't get over the... It's just upsetting to me. Like I used to have a rule I wouldn't spend more than $100 for a graphics card. You can't even get a basic graphics card for under $250. Seems like anyway. And even then, it's going to be pathetic compared to other gamers. They're going to just look down their noses at you. So I got other things to do. I really don't care. If I have a business that needs a GPU for rendering something that deals with productivity, that's a different story. Sometimes I need graphics cards because customers need 4 monitors hooked up simultaneously for Wall Street trading, day trading, things like that. And that's a whole different ball of wax because they don't care about the performance. They just need the outputs. It's just such a gross expenditure for something so, I don't know. It's got a very limited lifespan, a GPU. You're not likely going to have it more than 10 years. And I just can't see investing $2,000, $3,000 in a graphics card strictly because I want to play a game or flight simulator. I don't even like flying. I don't know why I'd want to simulate doing that. But that's just me. Oh, good. Let me just sit here staring at the horizon for 3 hours as this real life simulator simulates me flying. Now, I do enjoy flying. I enjoy the inertia and the excitement of takeoff and landing. I like the thrill of the, you could die at any minute. You don't get any of that from a simulator. You get no inertia, you get no gravity, and you get no real sense of danger. So to me, it doesn't quite cover the experience any more than a Lego house is like a real house. It isn't. It doesn't have air conditioning or plumbing. It's just, yeah, someone's going to send me a link to somebody who built a real house out of Legos. But you know what I'm talking about. So for me, the feeling of driving a race car is great, but the feeling of playing Forza or, I don't know, whatever the latest driving game in Gran Turismo, it doesn't feel like driving at all. Not in the least bit. There is no feeling. It's numb. It's relatively quiet. There's no real sense of danger because you know it's not real. It's like a child holding a stick and telling you it's a gun. Okay, if you enjoy that, you have at it. It takes more than that to excite me. It's just children's pretend. And it costs a lot of money. I go outside and pick up sticks for free. That's all I'm saying. I could pick up a stick and say it's a steering wheel and pretend I'm driving. Kind of is the same thing. Life is so much better when you actually live it versus sitting around simulating it. But that's just how I feel. You might feel differently. I thought you said the RAM was 3,200 speed. Okay, so that's like saying a car can go 165 miles an hour, and you get in the car and I'm driving 55, and you're looking at me going, I thought you said this car could do 165. Yeah, and this RAM can go 3,200. What part of that are you not getting? There's a baseline speed. In the case of driving the car, it's the speed limit. If you're on your own private property or somebody's private property, like a racetrack, then the speed limit doesn't apply, and you can open that up. I guess the speed limit now is what, 75, maybe even 85 in places in Texas. But the point I'm trying to make, and my computer went to sleep, the point I'm trying to make is that the default speed is where you want to be running it when you build it. And then if you want to overclock to the excessive speeds, where you want to put your foot down and exceed the speed limit because the car can do it, if that's your justification because it can, you need to do that safely. That's all I'm suggesting, is we make sure that we're doing it safely, that we're not going to cause any crashes. Because the RAM can run that fast doesn't mean that the silicon on the chip can handle that. And in many cases, Intel may void the warranty if they find out you did it. So that's kind of up in the air. Not quite aware of anybody that's had a warranty claim on a CPU, let alone had it declined because of XMP use. However, technically it's possible. So, and once again, you're not going to notice the difference. Like if I'm in the car and I'm doing 90 miles an hour and then I'm going 100 miles an hour, in my car, you cannot feel the difference inside the car. It feels exactly the same. Now, it might look different on the outside, but you as a passenger in my car, you cannot tell what speed between 90 and 100, you cannot tell. So does it make sense to go that extra speed with the extra danger that it has? Especially in this case, if it's illegal and you can go to jail for that. In this case here, it could cause damage. It could cause instability. In most cases, at least with DDR4, you're probably fine on the Intel platform, but you also probably aren't going to see anything other than numbers. And if you're fixated at looking at numbers, then you aren't really measuring reality. You're not measuring the actual difference it makes in how you use the computer. And I've yet to really find anybody that can demonstrate it to me and show me how their productivity increased because XMP was turned on outside of the AMD platform. On the Intel platform, it's pretty well invisible. And people just get fixated at looking at the numbers. If the numbers are lying, they don't even know. They're just happy that they see the number they want to see. I don't run my business that way. I don't go chasing after numbers. I'm chasing after profits. I'm chasing after customer value. Those are the numbers I'm chasing after. This kind of benchmarking and fixation on things that don't make any real difference to most people in reality seems unjustifiable to me. If you have a justification for it, I'd love to hear it. As far as I know, one doesn't exist. It's just because it's there. Best I can figure. And I can't make heads or tails of that. It's not practical. That's why you don't see me make a big deal about it, because it isn't. It's not a big deal. You wouldn't be able to tell outside of your benchmarks, outside of seeing the BIOS. You're looking at numbers and you are deciding if you're in a good mood or a bad mood based on what the screen tells you. You're allowing the computer to affect your emotion. It's supposed to be the other way around. Computers and technology are supposed to be there as our slaves. We aren't supposed to become slaves to them, and yet that's what society is becoming. The phone beeps, you stop what you're doing and look as though it's the most important thing that's ever happened. This is the big one. This is the thing that's going to change my life. I better stop whatever I was doing and address it immediately. People in our culture, in our society, have become delusional with self-importance over numbers and technology versus using the technology to actually raise themselves up to levels where they would become important and be making a difference in our society to others besides themselves, right? To focus on other people. And I don't know. I just think it's shocking that technology is doing we're treating it the opposite of what it was intended to do. And if this continues, and especially with AI and this inherent laziness of humans that I'm witnessing in our culture, it's frightening to see what our culture is going to voluntarily choose to do with it. It worries me, but the good news is I probably won't be around long enough to see it. So I do hope there'll be some people sane left in the world that understand the value of life versus the value of tech. Tech has a very limited value, and it's only helpful for whatever that task is, or whatever the series of tasks are for that time. And then it needs to be replaced or updated, or the tasks change. We could have automated making horseshoes. I don't know how much benefit those machines would do us today. Okay, I think the machine keeps falling asleep on me. I need to change that setting because it's going to drive me crazy. The reason that's happening is I'm looking at a window within a window. I can't see the screen full like you guys can at home unless I intentionally go full screen. When I do that, I cannot see anything else but the screen. So I can't see what OBS is telling me. I can't see what the chat room is telling me aside from the tablet here. And so my default is to leave it small because I don't necessarily need to read it. But if I need to make a small settings change and the font is this tiny, it's 10 feet away, I need the screen full so I can read it. So I'll just go down here and type in edit, and then edit power plan came up, and we'll change this to 3 hours and put the computer to sleep. Never. It's not a laptop. It's not running on batteries. No reason for a plugged-in computer to ever go to sleep. Now, a plugged-in monitor can go to sleep, and that's recommended. But the computer itself, unless it's got batteries, I would not put it to sleep unless you live in a country where electricity is very expensive. Otherwise, you're likely going to run into problems as a result of it. Okay, it looks like installation has been successfully completed. Good timing. We'll click OK, and I guess it's going to reboot to apply those drivers. I hear the fan ramping up, so something's happening. Is it rebooting? Ooh, fan's getting a little louder, but it's still relatively quiet. Realtek audio control. That. I don't like the little icons that appear down here, so to get rid of those, I just search for search permissions. Restart required. There it goes. So if I can do this quickly, under more settings, I turn that off. It sounds like it's trying to do something. I hear the fan going up and down, and I can't tell if it's doing it on its own or if it wants me to assist it. If it's doing it on its own, I want it to finish before it restarts. But if it's waiting on me, see, I didn't fully read what the window said. Let's go ahead and restart. Once the desktop comes back up, we can go to Windows Update. We can start downloading updates. Once all that's done, I know the system works well. Then and only then will I buy the product code to activate it. I don't want to activate it until I know I don't need to send a motherboard back for any reason, because there's no way for me to get the product code back. The product code stays tied to the motherboard for life. So that's one of the very last things we do. It's sort of like painting a car. You want to make sure that everything is straight and going to work before you go through the effort and expense of painting it. I used to test fly my model rockets before I painted them, because I would paint them and put all the decals on and then launch them and never see them again. So I said, you know what? I want to make sure the thing flies and I get it back before I spend any time or effort painting them. So I learned that lesson pretty early in life when I was launching rockets. All right. Now, our boot time might take a little bit longer while it's finishing the installation of the drivers, or it might not. I mean, it's still a pretty fast boot time. The system is whisper quiet. When the fan does ramp up, you can hear it, but it's not loud. And then we're going to go over to settings, and we're going to go over to Windows Update. and install now. Okay, I guess we're restarting. We've got about a few minutes left. We're going to wrap things up here. So if you have any final questions or concerns, this would be the time to talk to me. This is YouTube. It is meant to be interactive. If you're not going to talk to me, if you're not going to interact with our community, you might as well go watch TV, because that's what you're doing. And that's not what this is. You're not really taking advantage of how amazing and awesome it is to be able to communicate with other like-minded individuals and to be able to hear opinions or recommendations and use them as a means to help you make decisions, perhaps, or guide you. They're not necessarily intended to make the decisions for you, but to perhaps share in the conversation of things you may not have otherwise considered or took into consideration. Eugenio Doggo says, hello. Please comment on AI. I think AI is going to be amazing in so many ways and scary in so many others. In the field of medicine, AI may bring us solutions and cures to things that we've been working on, from Alzheimer's and Parkinson's to cancer and even things like MS and other things that research is going to happen very, very quickly. In weaponry, research is going to happen very quickly. So there's going to be advances with AI that are going to happen so fast. Once it gets rolling, the human race is going to evolve very, very quickly, technologically, medically, technically, but it will also be used to fool people, to scam people, to take advantage of people. But, look, cars are a wonderful invention. They're a great way to get around. They've also killed a lot of people who were getting around, whether they were driving intoxicated, weren't paying attention, had a failure, or made a bad decision behind the wheel and are no longer with us as a result. The good outweighs the bad, and that's why we continue to drive these dangerous things. I mean, we're surrounded around metal from the shoulders up. It's all glass. And we're driving them at incredible speeds that are likely not survivable. So we get in there and we act like it's nothing. We've become numb to the danger of driving, and people will text and distract themselves and do everything but drive because driving is so easy. But when two people do that next to each other, they often collide and may not be around any longer. So there is a downside to it. The screwdrivers that I use to fix things can also be used to stab somebody, and that's certainly been done. So the steak knife you use to cut your food or to open packages could be used to injure somebody. In much the same way, AI is going to be the same, but the scale of it is going to be much larger. Being able to tell real from fake is going to get more difficult, and there'll have to be authentication systems put in where you're going to be forced to identify yourself. You could say goodbye to your privacy, or you can say goodbye to knowing the truth, because no one's going to believe you're even a person until you're able to identify and prove. And in doing so, you'll lose your anonymity. But at the same time, you'll be able to confirm you're actually a real person, especially when it comes to acquiring certain things that AI will not be allowed to own. So in much the same way, there's good and there's bad. And I'm all for the good. I think the good far outweighs the bad. I'm not worried about the technology turning on us or anything like that. I'm worried about how people might use it in a nefarious way. And there's a lot of bad people out there. Look at how many scams are going on right now. Middle of the holidays season just started, and I'm getting scam emails that the post office tried to send me a package they couldn't deliver. My McAfee renewals come in. This is the same old crap from 10 years ago. So I hope nobody's falling for that crap. It's so unoriginal. It's just child's play and just ignorance at its best. What are these ignorant people going to do when they have AI? It's gonna make them look like they're not ignorant anymore. It'll be completely AI. It won't be them at all. But that's the downside or the scary side of it. But in exchange for a cure for cancer and Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and dementia and even forms of can't think of the word. where you can't move your limbs, things like that are potentially curable. It's just we can only do so much. You know, look how long it took us to find the shot for the pandemic. Look how long that development took. And they say that's record time. With AI, holy cow, could do that in less than a day. Good and bad. Good and bad. Let's see, we're downloading. That looks good. That looks good. Okay. Oh, I'm going to go to advanced here. And I want to turn on this. I want to turn on this. And I want to turn on, as far as optional, say they're ready? No, there are not. Cool. Paralysis was the word I was trying to think of. Yeah. There may be some forms of paralysis that are reversible. We're going to be very surprised with what AI finds in the medical side of things. Jim KJ3N reminds us he's got a YouTube channel. Be sure and check it out. Right on, Jim. And of course, Planet Cryos. And of course, our friend Doug Betts over at Live Windows Training with Doug Betts. Nick Caffrey says, how many BIOS updates should I expect after the first on a new motherboard? That's like asking me how many times should you expect to be sick when you moved into a new town in the first year you lived there? How could anybody answer that question with any level of accuracy? The BIOS updates aren't coming out scheduled. They're coming out as a result, as a response or reaction to something that was discovered or a change that was made, like a new line of processors that the CPU manufacturer decided to come out with to be compatible, that nobody knew about. The manufacturer kept it secret. So like 12th and 13th gen boards, or even some AMD boards. Some AMD boards, if you update them to the latest BIOS, may not work with your older CPU anymore. So you don't just blindly just take any new BIOS. You on the Intel side, you're fine, but on the AMD side, you could just brick your motherboard or require yourself. You might shoot yourself in the foot, so you have to go and buy a new chip. It will warn you about that, though, before you apply the BIOS. So a BIOS update is basically like an inoculation to a problem. And so you're asking me, how many problems should I expect on a new board, you know, after I buy it? Which is, again, it's like me saying, well, how many times should you be sick now that you move to a new town? And then you can pick any frame of time you want. So nobody can tell you that. It's not really all that important. If you're not having any problems, there's no reason for you to worry about the BIOS update. Once I do the build, because I'm building a brand new machine here, I want to make sure everything is current and up to date, brand new. Once it's sold, it may likely never get another BIOS update and won't need one. If it ever comes in for maintenance or repair or an upgrade, as part of the process, I upgrade the BIOS for security reasons. But again, it's probably entirely unnecessary. It's part of what I do as a business. It's part of how I add value to my customers to ensure that they are getting stuff for their money, that I'm not just taking their money and giving them back the same thing. I have to show that I've done something for the money. And in most cases, when it's done by a professional, you don't have to worry about any of the downsides, because the professional takes on the liability, financial responsibility of causing any damage, and just let somebody else do it. So once these are updated, and I want to emphasize, once these are updated, they're updated to today, so that when I sell it to a customer, I can assure my customers they have the latest and greatest features and security available at the time this was built. That's it. That's why you see me doing it. And when I come in for repair or upgrades, again, it's there to make sure they have the latest security, the latest compatibility, like with RAM and things like that, even though, especially if we're not upgrading the RAM, that likely will have no impact on the customer whatsoever. but it also shouldn't hurt anything unless, as I mentioned on some AMD boards, it may make the board incompatible with your current chip. So don't just assume by doing something it's always good. There's very few things in life I can consider everybody should always do all the time without any consequences. There's nothing but an upside. There's a potential downside to everything we do in life, and you should research and understand what your risk is and what the benefit is, and determine if that's a risk you want to take. If the risk-benefit analysis is in your favor, do it. If it isn't, don't. And I cover that with everything you do in life, from getting out of bed in the morning, getting in the car, getting in rush hour traffic, trying the sushi at the gas station. Look, you make those decisions, you live with those consequences. It's never always good. Can't think of one thing that's always good. Ready for a restart? In general, and I can't stress this enough as a PC repair technician, if everything's working, leave it alone. Just use your computer for why you purchased it. So unless you purchased it to just give you something to fix all the time, you're ultimately potentially creating taking a working, solidly built, reliable computer, and through boredom, with nothing else better to do, damaging it, and then having to look for help, and then perhaps being stressed or having anxiety about no longer being able to use the computer for how you were using it over something you didn't need to do because you thought you were going to make it better. The best way you can make it better is to leave it alone if it's working. Now, if there's something that's not working about it, we'd certainly love to help you with that. So people that come in here and they ask what would happen if, I'm not a gypsy, like I can't read the future. I don't have a crystal ball that works. So I can't tell you what'll happen if you do that. Why don't you do it and let me know? And then if you screwed it up and you want some help, we'll do our best to help you. But if everything's working and you like that, maybe just use the computer for why you purchased it. I know it's a crazy thought, but I don't own computers so that I have something to fix. I own computers because they run several tasks I need them to run for me. I use them primarily as a form of communication. And if my communication is down, I'm missing a lot of communication in a day. If I can't get my email, right? One of my clients' emails went down for weeks for their business, and it just sunk the business. It was bad. It's working again. But holy cow, did not have that. And so that's something beyond their control. But if that was voluntarily created by somebody going, I wonder if I could make the system better by updating the BIOS, and they took the whole system out in the process when there was no reason to do it, I think that's pretty foolish. So it's your system, it's your time. I don't know how you value either one, but if you value it and it's working, enjoy it. Don't try to make it better. Don't try to fix it if it ain't broken. And if you are having a real problem, not an imaginary one, like I wonder what would happen if, I hate those questions. Those are very easily answered by you. What would happen if I did it? Well, do it and let us know. Don't ask me, tell me. And if you're not willing to do it and try, then don't ask me, don't waste my time. But if you have a real problem, whether it's accidentally self-created voluntarily or something unavoidable that wasn't, anything you did, either way, we'll try our best to help you here with any real problems that actually exist. And with regards to the imagination and anxiety, that's something you need to see a doctor for. We can't prescribe anything here. Just leave it alone or set your expectations accordingly if you choose otherwise. It's yours to do with. I am a terrible salesman. I should encourage people to get under the hood when they don't need to. Probably generate a lot of business for me, and I could probably make a lot of money from it. But it's just not, it doesn't sit well with me to make my money that way. I think that'll wrap it up for us. Thanks you guys again for hanging out with me this Black Friday. Anybody find any good deals today? I haven't seen any good deals. I don't see any good deals myself. I have items on a wish list on Amazon that I'm keeping an eye on, and none of those prices have changed. Some of them they just put Black Friday sale, but the price is the same as it was all year long. So I don't know. I guess that's fooling people. Crazy66 says, I feel like times are changing. I have to stay on top of updates because companies are putting out unfinished products. So that's a generalization, and it's really an attitude issue. That's not a technological issue that's fixed with updates. That's a problem that's fixed with your attitude. If you're absolutely convinced that everything you buy is unfinished, like I went to the grocery store and the chicken wasn't cooked. I can't believe they sold it to me. It wasn't ready yet. There's certain areas of technology where that may be rampant, like in software, but generally when it comes to CPUs and hardware, it's pretty well solid. But the truth remains, if you buy, like let's say the Cybertruck's coming out, or any brand new first year car, it's going to have issues. Any brand new product that hits the market doesn't have to be a technology product. It's likely going to have a little rough, be a little rough around the edges. And if you want to be one of the first people to own that, then yes, you should expect to have to get updates and patches and, bring the car back to the dealer for things because it's a brand new model. The Ford Bronco, its first year, had all kinds of issues. That's just standard. That's for any new technology. It's not limited to computers. That's for anything brand new that just comes out. It'll always get refined over time. So the Intel platform, we're on the 13th generation. It's had 13 generations to be refined. If it was the first generation, I'm behind you. But now that's all long in the past. If it's some brand new game that just came out, it was probably rushed to market. And if you want to be one of the first people to buy it, then you should expect to have to do updates. My point is, if you have a system for 3 or 4 years and you watched one of my videos and go, oh, I never updated the BIOS, maybe I should. Maybe you shouldn't. If it's working and it's fine, leave it alone. But if you're one of those people that have this mental sort of anxiety that nothing is ever complete and everything is always sold undone, I can't help you with that. There are doctors that can help you with that. That only applies generally to brand new products that you are the first to buy. And anybody who's going to be a pioneer should expect to get some arrows in their back. It kind of comes with the territory. Otherwise, it's delusional to think that a product that's now in its 13th generation is going to have any major issues whatsoever that are likely to affect anybody. So, but that's just my opinion as a technician, keeping everything real and in practicality. When a new generation 1 of something comes out, you'll notice I don't buy it right away. When Windows 12 comes out, which it likely will, I'm going to give it at least 6 months because I don't want to go through all that nonsense. I got other things to do. If you've had something for a while, if the technology's been polished, this is a non-issue. So that's my opinion on that. I don't want other people to have that thought. It's toxic and it's very, very infectious. So I just really hope people reject that. This is my inoculation to my viewers to not adopt that mindset if possible. It doesn't bring anything good. There's no benefit to it. Paul says, I bought a Wi-Fi 6E router for 23 euro, but I already had a 240-pound top-up balance. That sounds like you paid a bit more than. I get you, though. That's cool. John Williams says, thanks for the live stream. Have a nice weekend. Doma 2000 says, oh, the bar is closing. Yeah. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. All right, guys. I do try to release a little bit of logic and practicality in my videos, and it just drives me crazy sometimes because it seems so simple and obvious to just do the simple thing and stop making things overly complicated and creating issues. But some people are just built that way. They just can't leave well enough alone. If I can discourage you, you know, from unnecessarily doing work that doesn't need to be done to cause problems you don't need to have, I really want to do that, even though it goes completely against my line of work. So in any event, I hope you appreciate the message, even if the message sometimes comes across a bit harsh. It's because I feel very strongly about it. And I hope that the emotion I put behind it makes the words hit a little harder, a little more meaning, and maybe get through where they otherwise wouldn't. In the meantime, my thanks to everybody who has contributed today. A shout out again once more to all of our members, our subscribers. A shout out to our good friend Buster, Peter Laycock out there in Scotland. We're thinking of you, my friend. I hope you're doing well. I hope your brother gets home soon. And we will see everybody. Well, I don't think I have videos this weekend. I could be wrong. I don't think I have anything scheduled until next week. On Monday, I always do members only videos every Monday, 1 o'clock Arizona time. That's 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. And that's for members only every Monday. And if you're a member, I hope I will see you then. Until next time. Oh, and thanks, of course, tomorrow for the thumbnail in the video notes for today's video. Bye for now. I got the wrong mouse. Okay, here's a quick outro.